Welcome to Real Estate Insights, the show where I sit down with top real estate pros across Utah and Idaho to talk market strategy and how they help their clients win. I'm your host, Caleb Adams. Let's get into it. My guest is Kam Spackman, a realtor with Cornerstone Real Estate Professionals up in Preston, Idaho. Someone whose judgment I really trust at an event told me, you've got to connect with Kam. So I've been wanting to get him in a room for a while now. Grateful to have you here and figure there's no better way to get to know you than on the podcast today. So Kam, welcome.
I appreciate it.
Looking forward to getting to know
Thank
you.
you. Caleb, I appreciate the invite. I'm excited to be here and excited to talk with you about a few things.
To kick things off, I'd love to hear a little bit about you and start from the beginning. How'd you get into real estate?
Yeah, man, I'm a little bit of a scaredy cat, right? Real estate has always been something that I've been interested in. I look up to a lot of people that do real estate. I love to see homes. I kind of have a passion for seeing the unique things that go on in a home, what builders are doing and what people have done to decorate and upgrades. It's just kind of a fun part of it. But you know what? It took me a really long time to pull the trigger. I tell people that I'm not very book smart. I never went to college. I didn't do the greatest in high school. I was kind of the kid that I'd run off and go fishing or go do something else out there. So it took me a lot of courage to finally do it. So what I did was I went ahead and about a little over a year ago, told my wife, I says, hey, I'm going to do it. I'm going to jump on. Took me a little bit of time there, but we got it done. I'm excited to do it. I love interacting with people. I've always thought that it's a great compliment when somebody tells me, hey, like, a lot of people, Cam. I take that as a compliment. It's my favorite thing. I love to know people, love to
That
get
might be
to
the
know
best
people.
compliment. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. 100%. Yeah, it's fun to know people and what they got going in their lives. And so, yes, selling houses and getting people into homes is a lot of fun, but the relationships that come along the way, that's what really connects with me and holds with me the longest.
That's awesome. Well, I really admire a couple things you said there. One, your tenacity of pushing through. It's easy to look for reasons to not do something,
Yeah,
but you had your head set straight that you're going to do this. That already tells me that you're going to work hard for your clients
I appreciate
and
that.
get them to the
Yeah,
finish line. So that's
yeah.
awesome. And yeah, I've seen this time and time again, and sounds like you have too, but street smarts matter more than book smarts a lot of the time.
Yeah.
It's great to have the education, but if you know how to work with people and help
I
people get their
appreciate that.
dreams, I think that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. And props to the people that do go to college. There's a big part of me that always wishes I did. I wish I would have went and gotten some marketing degree or something like that. But yeah, I mean, like you say, I'm a hands-on learner. In high school, I jived with welding and shop and FFA and doing hands-on stuff. And so, that's why I love real estate and things like that is, yeah, there's a lot of book stuff to know, but getting out and being in the thick of it and showing homes and interacting with people, that's how I learn. I'm learning from other agents and my broker and lenders like you and things like that more than I am if I were to sit down and pop a book open and read it. I'm learning from you guys hands on and it's a lot of fun. So
Yeah. Well, just since we're talking about your start and the beginning of real estate, is there any advice you would give to a new real estate agent who's up and coming?
yeah, it's kind of funny. I have a buddy that he was looking into getting his real estate license and he always jokes with me and says, I decided not to get my real estate license because I saw you were doing it and I don't want to take food off your table and I don't want to take money away from your family and it seems like there's kind of a saturated market. And when I was getting my real estate license, that was a big concern of mine is, man, there's a lot of real estate agents out there. The brokerage I work for has 30 agents that work underneath it. Am I going to be able to get any business? Am I going to be able to sell any homes? And what I've learned is it's all about who you know and the relationships you build. So I'm going to go back to the old Nike saying of just do it. If you think it's something you want to do, take the leap, jump right into it and just make it happen. Sure, there's a lot of real estate agents out there, but there's also a lot of homes and a lot of buyers. And it may take you some time to get it done. You may get your license and your first year, you might only sell one or two or three or four. But my advice for anybody thinking about doing it is just do it. And it's definitely scary. I tell my buddy all the time, don't worry about the saturated market. Don't worry about, if you have a really good friend or a family member that's a real estate agent, that could be an opportunity to work together. I tell my buddy all the time, I says, man, if only you had your real estate license, I've got to take off from my other job and run to Colorado. I got somebody that wants to look at a house. I'd really love to be able to have you go do it, and partner it. So, it's scary, it's hard, but definitely rewarding. And
Love that. I love that. It's kind of like have that abundant mindset of there's
yeah,
enough to go around instead of
yeah.
the scarcity. So
Yeah,
awesome.
and I think that's what makes you successful too is going into being a realtor. Don't look at it as a competition because it's not. You know, to be a good realtor so far with what I've learned is the realtors that are willing to help you and give you advice. And I've gotten referrals from other realtors and I've built relationships that way. Be that realtor. Don't be the realtor that comes in and looks at it as a competition. You just want all the business. What I've found so far personally is that the more successful agent is the one that's willing to help everybody out. So,
100%. What goes around comes around, right?
yes, yes.
We kind of touched on the market a little bit, so I want to dive a little bit deeper into that. Now, you're in Preston, so is most of your
hmm
stuff up there in Preston? I know you're licensed in Utah as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, so I'm licensed in both Utah and Idaho. Most of my stuff I've been doing is in Idaho. I've kind of wiggled. I've got family in Utah, so I've been able to get some deals done there, but I'd like to get into Utah quite a bit more. But most of what I'm doing is in Idaho right now.
God, do you feel like it's leaning more towards buyers or sellers? What are you seeing?
I'd like to say it's leaning towards buyers right now. The economy is freaking wild, man. I don't know everything, but the market's an emotional roller coaster right now. We've got high fuel prices and we've got interest rates that decide they want to come up and then they decide they want to come down and it's just kind of running back and forth. If I had to say one or the other, I'd say it's a buyer's market right now. Homes are coming on. We're seeing about 60 to 90 days of sitting on the market for most homes. And you're seeing a lot of opportunity for maybe a lesser price offer or contingencies or, concessions on closing costs and things like that. You're seeing a lot of I wish I would have jumped on getting my license back in 2020 and 2021 when we saw those astronomically low interest rates that, in all reality we may never see again. But, I'm in it now and I'm dealing with what we have. And you've got some houses that I'm like, all right, list this $1 million house and it's probably going to take a year to get it sold. And 6 days later, it goes under contract. It's like, what in the world, man? That's crazy,
Amazing.
And yeah. And then you'll list a 2 bed, 1 bath somewhere. And it's like, all right, this one's going to go quick. And it takes a little bit longer to get it done. I don't think that that's anything that should hold anybody up. If you're looking to move, if you're looking to buy, reach out to that agent and just ask the questions and give it a try. If you're wanting to make that leap and make that move, I'd suggest, still doing it. A lot of what I hear is, well, I'm going to wait for interest rates to come down. I'm going to wait for this opportunity. I'm going to wait for that opportunity. And, that's cool. It's great. Be cautious. I definitely suggest being cautious, but if you wait too long, it may never happen. If you wait to list your house till you find the home that you're in love with, you may not get the home that you're in love with because it may take a little bit longer to get your home sold. My suggestion is when you're ready, get it done right now. I mean, I'm sure on the lending end of things, you can see it, and maybe we can talk about that a little bit on interest rates. But, people say, oh man, I'm going to wait for that 3 or 4% interest rate again. And you think about history, right? Back in the day, people used to see 10 and 13% interest rates on home mortgages, and the fives and the sixes and the sevens, that was a really good interest rate. And being honest right now in this world, that's a pretty good interest rate if you can get a 5 or a 6 or a 7. People saw those 3%, 2.8, 3 point something percent interest rates, and they think that that's the new normal. And they're waiting for that to happen again when that was really rare, right, Caleb?
Absolutely. Super rare. I've had these conversations before. When you venture into the
hmm
unknown, especially like moving, it's a huge financial decision. I think we
Yeah.
look for reasons to not make that decision sometimes. We know it's the right
Right.
decision, but we look for reasons to maybe wait
Yeah.
just because we want to wait for no other reason.
Yeah. Yeah.
And people use interest rate or home prices as kind of that escape from the decision making. And the hard part is they're movable, right? When rates go down, then the excuse is, well, home prices are too high or it's too
Yeah.
competitive. It's a
Yeah.
seller's market. So there's always something that I see on the interest rate side,
Yeah.
but usually is a way to get out of the decision that needs to be made.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It's definitely a scary market, yes, what I always kind of call it a double-edged sword, In my opinion, honesty is key, so I'm just going to throw it out there. But, when those
Sure. Yeah,
interest
please
rates
do.
were low, Yeah, when those interest rates were low, it drove house prices through the roof, right? It just did, and now we have interest rates that have worked their way up, but the house prices haven't come back down, and and from what I'm hearing and the knowledge that I'm gaining, you're probably not gonna see house prices work their way back down very much, you know? We're a growing economy, especially in the Cache Valley area. There's a lot of room for growth. And so it's just going to keep, continuing to bring those home prices up and be a growing market. And so it's kind of a double-edged sword right now where you have the normal interest rates, I'm gonna call them, the 6 and 7%, 5%, but also house prices are high. And so, I'd like to see a little bit more of those house prices work down a little bit or some more deals go on, but it's just kind of the world we're living in right now, in my opinion.
Absolutely. I'm curious if, from the buyer's perspective, are there
Mhm.
any property types in your area that you feel like are doing better or there's more opportunity to buy right now?
I've got a handful of listings right now, and, that 500,000 and under range, they tend to be sitting a little bit more right now. You think, you get into your 3 and $400,000 range, and that's a little bit more affordable, but I've actually seen a lot more of your $1,000,000 homes and $800,000 homes. I've actually been physically seeing those go quite a bit quicker right now. So from a buyer's standpoint, if you're looking for that horse property or that more acreage or that larger home, those tend to be moving a little bit more than your 500,000 and under for sure.
Interesting. So it sounds like you have to be a little bit more polished in your offer
Yeah.
with those larger
Yeah.
properties because they're going quick.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I had some clients that I've been working with for 3 or 4 months now, and we tried on 2, more expensive properties. They were looking for a horse property with some acreage and water and a larger home. They got 7 kids, and we tried for 2 houses in the past 4 months, and we lost them because we
Wow.
just didn't even get the opportunity to get in there. I mean, they come on, $1,000,000 home, and 6 days later, it's under contract. And so we finally found one a week ago that hit the market, and we had it under contract in a date because we've been looking for it. We've been looking for that specific property, and so yeah. I mean, it's just kind of different right now. So
Yeah, that's good to know. It sounds like there might be some opportunity for buyers too if they're looking to pick up some investment properties, maybe in that three to
mhm.
500,000 range.
Yeah, for
Sellers
sure.
might be a little bit more willing to move on those.
Yeah, yeah, there's definitely opportunity there for investors on that lower market end. A lot of these homes are sitting a little bit, and I always tell my clients, I don't want to get honesty is key again. I don't want to tell my clients, hey, we're gonna list your $300,000 house, 2 bed, 1 bath, or whatever, and it's gonna go, like that because it's probably not. I tell my clients to expect, some lower offers or expect to pay some closing costs or things like that, just so that they know up front, because it's life altering. I always tell my clients that moving, selling a home, buying a home, it's a huge decision, and that's kind of what I stand by is, I don't want to rush my clients and it's bit me in the butt once out of all the clients that I've had, kind of per se you could say a pitch is I'll tell my clients, hey, I'm a non-pressure guy. I've sold 3 or 4 homes, before I was a real estate agent, and I don't like the pressure, I don't like the pushiness, so that's kind of the realtor that I wanna be is a non-pressure guy, and I had one client say, "Well, I need somebody that'll get it done for me," and it's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa, whoa," I'll get it done for you, I'm just saying that I'm not gonna call you every day on the hour saying, "Let's get a home bought," because it's such a huge decision. Most of my deals that I've been having on the buyer's end lately have been 3, 4, 6 months or a year in the process, I get to the point where, on the buyer's end, I'll be like, "Oh, well, maybe these clients just aren't gonna buy," and that's fine, and then the next day, they'll text me, a year later and be like, "Hey, we're ready to rock and roll. We just found one we love. Let's get it done." So, patience is a virtue.
Yes, especially in this business. You got to plant those seeds and it takes some time for them to come to
Yeah.
fruition. Where are you finding people to work with right now?
I've actually had a lot more on the listing side than I have the buying side. The biggest thing is just word of mouth is where I'm finding, I don't pay for the leads. I don't, pay realtor.com or anything for the leads or anything like that. It's all word of mouth. That's where it all comes down to who you know and knowing people and how it's a compliment of knowing people. I've had a lot of, friends that I've grown up with and and friends of my parents and this and that that have reached out just because they've seen me sell a home or things like that. And so a lot of where I'm finding my clients these days and the people that I'm working with are just through a friend of a friend or through a family friend or through, I volunteer on the fair board and stuff in Preston. And so,
Oh, very
people know
cool.
me from that. So that's a lot of where my clients come from. I don't know if I'll ever get to the point where I want to pay for realty leads and pay for a client. I've had clients
It's
in the
not
past.
all it's chalked up to be. It works for
Right.
some, but
Right.
they can
Yeah.
be an expensive venture.
Yeah. Yeah, and, there's definitely opportunity there, but, in any business, so like you say, I do sales with supplements, with ranchers and stuff like that, and one thing that I stand by is it's gotta work for both parties. I've had people where they reach out to me and they start asking me realty clients or realty questions and market questions and this and that, and at the end of our conversation, you know, at the end of the day, they need to want to work with you, and you need to want to work with them. And if one side of the party isn't too excited about working with the other, it's just not a great relationship to have. And I've had clients where they've gone to another realtor and good on them. We're kind of in a market right now where more than once I've had clients say, hey, we're kind of per se interviewing you, and we're interviewing two or three other, realtors this same day, and they've gone with another realtor. And it's easy for a realtor to be upset about that, but in my opinion, I think that's a great thing because, again, going back to how important it is and how big of a deal it is to buy a home, you need somebody that's going to fight for you and that you feel like you connect with. So
Man, I connect with a lot of agents, and I can tell this is why you do well. That
I
abundant
appreciate that.
mindset. If you don't get every deal,
Hmm.
great. There's so much to go around. There's so many people to serve and help. How do you feel like you're helping clients win in this market? We've talked about that a little bit. And what's the experience you hope clients have with you?
Yeah, a big win for me is when my clients close on a home or we get their home sold and it was stress free. That's the biggest thing for me. That's my job, is to help them sell their home or get into the home that they love without them being stressed and going home and not being able to sleep at night or being worried. My job is to, get through the paperwork and get through the offer and navigate and negotiate, and that's how I feel like I'm being successful with clients and things that way, is because, if they're not stressed during the whole process, that's my favorite thing. It puts a smile on my face at the end of the day. And, I have a lot of clients too, or I have had some clients where, they always apologize. They're always, "Oh, I'm sorry, but can we go look at this home today?" Or, "Oh, I'm sorry, can we go look at 3 or 4 homes today?" And they're, "Oh, I'm sorry, I'm wasting your time." And it's like, "No, you're definitely not. Let's go look at 40 homes. If you want to go look at 40 homes to find the one you love, let's do it. Because at the end of the day, it makes me feel better. It makes me feel successful that we found the one that you absolutely love and that you're going to move into and be happy with. My biggest fear is having somebody sell their home or buy a home and then fully regret it. And that's the last thing that I want to happen, is that. Going back to that first question of success with clients, it's really just as simple as that. Is if it's stress-free and they're happy, that's the best part of it. That's, uh, that's how I feel like I can be, a winner with those guys. So,
Yeah. I feel like if I were to summarize and make a tagline, it'd be like Kam Spackman, the stress free, pressure free,
yeah,
real.
yeah. That's that's what it's all about for sure, and
I don't know who wouldn't want that.
yeah, yeah. That's something that makes me unique. I wanna be careful how I word this because every realtor does their job different, and just because they do it different doesn't mean they're wrong. But kind of what I've seen, and the realtor that I wanna be for people is the one that, the client feels like I'm doing my job correctly. I try and be unique. It's scary and it's quirky and it's weird. I like to post videos. I take videos of myself with the home. I'll create videos, I'll throw some music to it, whatever, that way, and people are like, "Oh, that's so silly." Or, if you jump on my real estate page for Easter, a lot of people don't like the AI, but I use AI and I'll throw a freaking Easter bunny suit on me and post it out for the public to see, and
That's
just be
awesome.
kind of different that way, and so I feel like that's a perk that I have, is if you put your trust in me to be your realtor, whether it's buying or it's selling, I'm gonna do everything I can, we're going to do open houses. And I'll be completely honest, for a lot of realtors, they might think an open house is a waste of time. I've got one home where I've probably done 6 open houses on it, not had one client come to any of the 6, but I'm still pushing, I've even had the client say, man, like, do you think it's worth it to do an open house still? You haven't had anybody show up in the past 6 open houses. It's a lot of work. Should we still be doing it? And my answer is yes, because you never know, coming back to another kind of old adage is, for me, it only takes one. It might take us 90 days or 60 days to sell your home, but it only takes one buyer or whatever that way to get your home sold. It only takes one. So we need to continue to do the work. It's super easy to be discouraged when you do an open house and nobody shows up. But the biggest thing is when you're doing those open houses, I kind of take them as an advantage to manage my time. So for that couple hours, either I'm posting your house on social media or I'm walking through and doing videos of each room of your home so that I have a bunch of footage to be able to continue to market it, every other day, keep it in front of people, so I'm going through taking pictures. I'm going through doing footage so that I have that to be able to keep it in front of people, keep it in front of the market, or, there's been times, and this is kind of an extreme, but, if somebody's got a vacuum laying around while I'm doing an open house, heck yeah, I'm going to grab that vacuum and start vacuuming all the rooms or something that way, to make sure it's ready to go. And again, it goes back to, making life stress free for these guys and just letting them sit back and relax while I do all the work for them. So
I'm a huge fan of open houses. Our first house, it was like 5 minutes before an open house ended. Anyway, when saw it, rest is history. We bought it.
yeah, yeah, no, that like you say, it
So
only
they
takes one,
work.
and you were the one.
I was the one at the very end. The agent was probably like, this guy keeping me after.
Yeah, yeah,
Then we
for
bought, so I
sure.
guess he was happy.
Like you say, open houses, they're kind of, hit or miss, but, and sometimes you'll get a bunch of looky-loos where it's like, the neighbor, I've had so many open houses where the neighbor's like, oh, I just want to look, I just want to see my neighbor's house, and they're being nosy. And, a lot of clients, they don't love that, but I actually have, had one deal where that neighbor, they're like, oh, I'm just being nosy. Well, then their daughter came in and she bought it, and so it's just like, yeah, okay, you can be, frustrated that the neighbor's coming and being nosy and looky-looey, but you never know, they might have the connection to bring a buyer to your home, you know? So you gotta have that
Totally.
open mind.
Yeah, two thoughts that this gives me. One, I have a really good friend who's a financial planner, and he's built his whole business off of events. He,
Mhm.
will do these events where he kind of does seminars and teaches people. And he tells me that sometimes he gets hundreds of people and sometimes it's 4 or 5.
Yeah.
And when it's only a couple, he just has to remind himself, you just got to trust the process.
Yeah.
Sometimes you do 6 open houses and people don't show, but you got to trust the process because, like you said, just takes one.
Yeah. Yeah,
It's part of that grit that it takes.
for sure.
So
For sure.
I always think of it like, a house might sit on the market for a while, not because it's a
Yeah.
bad house, but
Yeah.
because the right buyer hasn't come along yet. And there's nothing wrong with that. It might be
Yeah.
someone's dream house. It just took
Yeah.
a minute for the buyer to show up.
Well, and that's the thing too, is with that, going back to my story of these clients that I've been working with for 3 or 4 months, and we lost a couple houses, and then one came on the market and we had it under contract in a day. There's 2 sides to that, right? So, from the selling side, in this case, there was another agent that had his home listed, and when we had it under contract in 8 hours, the sellers were like, "Oh man, this realtor, we must have listed our home way too cheap." Man, like, what the heck? What's going on? We should have asked $100,000 more. And she probably got a little bit of heat from that. But at the end of the day, that's not the case. Be patient, take your time, because when you're looking for something specific, in this case, I had the buyers and we'd been looking for months, and we jumped on it quick. And from the seller side, it's easy to think, man, we went too cheap. But also, you got to have the open mind of these clients, they've been looking for our specific house for this long, and they were just ready to go, and we didn't want to miss it, so we jumped on it. So you got to have an open mind and look at it and just trust that your agent is doing everything that they can for you, and that your agent knows they've done the work, they've done that comparable market analysis to see what your home is worth and what they feel comfortable listing it at and things like that. So you got to trust that process for sure.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I heard someone say, a mentor friend of mine, that instead of trying to start your own parade, you just need to get in front of someone else's parade.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing with the neighbors, it's like, why be the only salesman on the house when you can have
Yeah.
20 other salesmen
Yeah. Yeah,
out there
for sure.
telling their family about it. It's the other value of the open house is neighbors come see it and then tell their coworkers, their friends, family,
Yeah.
etc.
Yeah, no, honestly, Caleb, that's why I love you're doing this podcast because you're putting it out there. You're helping educate people. You're helping, and you as a lender, it's pretty sweet what you're doing. It's a cool thing, and like I say, it all falls back to relationship, and marketing. The biggest thing is, yeah, sure, it takes a lot of time to sit down on your phone and make a post or create that video, but it's worth it. It's worth it in the end, and that's probably some more advice that I could give to any new agent or any agent that's been an agent for a long time. Social media, whether people like it or not, it's the route that the world is going. Your Instagram, your Facebook, your TikTok. I know back in the day, it was a lot easier to not do social media. But the way the world's turning these days is social media is huge. Get out of your comfort zone. Shoot that video with you in it of you walking through the home and talking and putting your face out there, or, take the time to post, because that's where a lot of my leads have come from, is people that have seen me on social media, that have seen the work that I'm doing. So if you're a new realtor or a current realtor or even a lender, or anything in the realty and the real estate market industry, put yourself out there because it's a huge deal. So
Yeah, social media is the new storefront, right? Instead of the billboard as you drive down Main Street, it's now your reel or your bio on
yeah,
your on your feed.
for sure.
So yeah, that's
100%.
the new world we're in. And speaking of
Yeah.
social media, when buyers or sellers want to work with you, how can they
Yeah.
get in contact with you?
I'll just throw out my phone number. It's 435-232-2771 is my cell phone number. My phone is always on. If you guys want to call me at midnight, I might be sleeping when I answer the phone. My voice might be a little bit groggy, but I'm going to answer. I run an Instagram page called Kam Spackman Real Estate, a Facebook page called Kam Spackman Real Estate. Do a little bit on TikTok, and but those are my socials right there. And then I also have the Cornerstone website. You can jump on Cornerstone Real Estate Professionals and find me on there as well.
I appreciate having you on today. For those listening, reach out to Kam. He's your guy. He'll help you list or buy stress-free without any pressure.
I appreciate the shout out, and same goes to you, Caleb. We know that you're in the mortgage industry. I always like to say, get pre-approved first before we get looking. Then you know where you're at, and I'm sure you can advocate for that as well.
I appreciate it. Yeah, it's hard to shop when you don't know how much you can shop for.
Yeah, yep, for sure.
Well, appreciate it, Kam. Thanks for being on.
Thanks, Caleb.
That's a wrap on this episode of Real Estate Insights. A huge thank you to my guest for sharing their time and playbook. If you're a top agent in Utah or Idaho and you'd like to be featured on the show, I'd love to have you. Reach out anytime. I'm Caleb Adams, mortgage broker here in Utah and Idaho, who loves connecting great agents with great people who need them. We'll see you next time.